Hello and welcome to the Stool Pigeons. I'm Jack Jameswood.
And I'm Harrison Davenport.
Harrison, I think you have the read for us this week.
I do. This story comes to us from r/relationships from ANVN1724, titled, I've been secretly watching my sister-in-law cheat with her coworker. My name is Kyle. I'm writing this in the early morning hours when I get my best work done. More than a decade ago, I founded a company that develops a host of popular apps. We were an early adopter of software as a service. We focus on aiding small to medium-sized businesses migrate their applications to a SaaS model. I would say financially, I'm comfortable. My company has made me money, and I've outsourced a lot of the major responsibilities to those below me. Unfortunately, professional success has no correlation to personal happiness. Now, not that far from 40, I find myself without any truly close personal relationships, outside of the one I have with my brother. He's 10 years younger than me, and sometimes this age gap creates communication problems. He can't hear or understand certain things I say because of this gap. This communication failure has been especially true in the last few months. This post is as much about Lucas as it is about me. I've developed an unhealthy obsession with his wife, Emily. It's difficult to explain or talk about, but I wanted to write a post and share it with someone, even if the people reading it are strangers. I'll briefly summarize the relationship since it's relevant to the rest of the story. Lucas and Emily got married 2 years ago. In high school, they started out as friends, but later became romantic. She went to college on the East Coast, but she moved back to the Bay Area not long after graduation. They reconnected a couple years ago by chance, finding each other on Hinge. Initially, when they first got reacquainted, she referred to their first date as a meetup. I believe it was an early morning sit-down for coffee. Lucas interpreted this as rejection, and maybe it was in a way. He got the sense that she no longer found him physically attractive and wanted to keep the friendship, but hold back on anything physical. He quickly got into shape in about 3 months, incorporating all exercise and dieting fads, intermittent fasting, high-intensity interval training, and a restrictive diet, with an almost religious devotion. Perhaps this was the reason things between them evolved from a friendship into romance, as had been true in high school as well. From an outsider's perspective, the first year of their marriage possessed a certain kind of rhythmic magic and charm to it. They were always laughing and smiling at each other, and showing small signs of affection, like kissing each other whenever one of them left the room. I knew they were dissatisfied with their living conditions because they mentioned it so often. They dropped hints that they'd love to live in my house. At some point, the conversation came up, and I've been letting them rent my house while I stayed in my apartment in the city, which is a more convenient location for me anyway. Before they moved in, I made the terrible decision of renting out my house to some coders, young 20-somethings who are potential hires. Then, not long after, a series of valuables went missing from my home. One evening I came home, and my kitchen was flooded. I even started to think people were getting into my house while I was gone and taking my stuff. So I installed a security camera in the back and front entrances equipped with video and audio. When Lucas and Emily moved in, the security cameras continued to operate as before. I explained everything about the security cameras to them, including how they worked, what part of the home they recorded, and how to use the system if he ever needed to use it. He didn't seem to care about it when I brought it up. Then a few months ago, I received an email that the system needed a major security update. I texted Lucas, instructing him how to do it, but he never responded to that text. So one afternoon, not that long ago, I went over there and did it myself. Emily was working from home that day. I told her I was updating the security cameras. I asked her whether she wanted me to show her how they worked, but she waved me away, put her hand over her phone and said, "I'm in the middle of something," and asked whether I could deal with it on my own, and I told her I could. During COVID, Lucas's job has been considered essential business. He works for a company that prints billing statements for large banks. He thought if he volunteered to take on more responsibilities, his bosses would take notice and reward him with a higher salary or a better position. So far, the opposite has been the case. Instead of getting praise or pleasing his bosses, he's mostly just pissed them off. Taking more responsibilities has meant in practice, he's the point person for everyone, including clients and upper management. More often than not, management and clients want him to do different things, leaving no one happy overall. He's constantly on the phone, and the stress is evident in his face. After I installed the security updates, I told Emily I'd be sticking around for dinner. I took a shower and got some work done from my office upstairs. I noticed how different the house felt. Emily redecorated a lot of the rooms, but the first thing I noticed was how amazing everything smelled. A nice mixture of something like lavender and vanilla, but not heavy, just lightly permeating through the air. And in my absence, the house seemed warmer somehow, like it had gained its own personality, which I suppose was an extension of Emily's personality. From my office, I eavesdropped on Emily's conversation. I could hear her speaking with a work colleague on Zoom. At times, they discussed their marketing campaign they were working on, but this seemed to be only a small part of their conversation. The rest of it dwelled on more personal matters. I learned the guy's name is Jacob. At one point in the conversation, he asked Emily about her relationship with my brother. From the way he spoke, it seemed like he knew their relationship in a detailed way, more detailed than what you'd expect if they were merely colleagues. She must have worried I could hear the conversation because she whispered something in a low voice, and I heard him say, "Oh, okay," and they started talking about other things. Again, almost none of it work-related. When Lucas walked through the front door, it was late. I barely got to see him. His phone rang endlessly as he answered calls and questions from his employers. Then he took a shower for a long time. I planned to call in food from his favorite Indian restaurant. As Emily was wrapping up her Zoom call with Jacob, I asked if I could borrow her phone to place the order because my phone was dead. After I called it in, I discreetly opened up her text messages to see the ones Jacob had sent. I noticed that he had recently sent her pictures. None of them were sexual, but they could be interpreted as flirtatious. Jacob's an attractive guy, probably about 6 foot, lean, and muscular, with a light beard. I'm sure he has no problems finding women. One of the pictures involved him running with his 2 labs. In one photo, he was shirtless on a hiking trail with them. Again, none of them were overtly sexual, I guess. But what guy sends shirtless pictures to a married woman who is supposed to be a colleague and not a love interest? When she got off her call, I tried to pry some more, mentioning that it sounded like she got along well with the people she worked with. By asking a couple of follow-up questions, I gleaned from her that Jacob was single. Her face lit up when she talked about him. When Lucas came into the room after a shower, she became cold and looked unhappy, unlike the way she had moments earlier. There was tension in their marriage. I could only guess the specifics, but it was obvious what some of the contributing factors might be. Physically, he looked exhausted and had gained a considerable amount of weight since the last time I saw him. And on the other hand, Emily looked great. A tight physique, narrow waist, round butt with relatively large and firm breast. I'm sure some of the hang-ups from their past, where physical appearance mattered to her, remained on his mind and drained his self-confidence. Not to mention all the work he faced. I should say that what happened next was based on good intentions on my part. While neither Emily nor Lucas know that I had remote access to their cameras, I do. It never crossed my mind to invade their privacy or get myself involved in their marriage. But I wanted to figure out whether anything was happening between Emily and Jacob. They are, after all, 2 attractive people, who struck me as having good chemistry. I wanted to believe I went into this situation with a genuine interest in helping my brother. Perhaps I've been deluded myself the whole time. For all the advances in technology, these security cameras leave a lot to the imagination. I probably should have paid more to get a crisper visual and audio feed, but I didn't. At first, I occasionally watched footage of Emily at her home working, and her interactions with Lucas. I noticed he left early and came home late. They barely spent time together, and on the weekends, he mostly slept and ate. I could hear pieces of their audio feed where they fought, but never got a sense of the whole thing. The only place in the house where audio and video are perfect is in the kitchen, but it's also pretty decent in the living room too. Then I noticed over time I was watching Emily. I watched her working, I watched her work out, I watched her do yoga, and open up packages from Amazon. A few weeks ago, she opened one up, and it was a sex toy. I stopped watching the parts where Lucas came home because they made me depressed, and it felt too invasive to watch another person's relationship intimately, even though they know, at least on some level, that the security system is working around the clock. At some point, I crossed the line from concern for my brother's relationship with his wife to an obsession with her. Even right now as I'm writing this, I tell myself I'm going to stop watching her, but I probably won't. That fills me with a sense of self-hatred. There have been 2 moments so far where I crossed the line. On one occasion, I saw Emily change in the living room. Like I said previously, the visuals aren't great, even a little grainy, but that still doesn't take away from the fact that I got aroused by seeing her nude for a moment. and it surely doesn't excuse the fact I've clipped the video and have it saved on my computer. The second incident made me even more conflicted because it justified my initial concerns and makes me think something is going on with Emily and Jacob. They were having a conversation over Zoom one afternoon. It was difficult to tell whether it was a work or personal call. I just remember her smiling and laughing a lot during the conversation. Finally, after they got off the call, she went to her bedroom and brought the vibrator into the living room and placed the computer on the table. I could hear the low buzzing sound of the device. I could see before she closed her eyes, she was looking at an image on her computer. I have no idea what the image was, but I have some guesses. I watched her pleasure herself for a long time, and as she did it, I did the same, focusing on her body. She never got completely naked, but she was massaging herself over her underwear. If I were only concerned about my brother's well-being, I could have just expressed my concerns months ago, when I first learned about Jacob. But I'm pretty sure anyone reading this can tell my actions go well beyond some selfish action. I'm conflicted over what to do. I imagine most would suggest I come clean, maybe in a way that doesn't disclose all these details. I understand this sentiment and would likely be the best course of action. I know that's unlikely to happen. I'm too far in at this point. Also, I don't have any dirt on Jacob or evidence that his relationship with Emily is anything more than two friendly work colleagues. I'm going to tell myself that I'm going to stop watching Emily and will delete the 2 videos I've saved. And whatever snooping I continue to do will be exclusively in the interest of figuring out whether there's something romantic going on between her and Jacob. There are more details to this story, but I haven't figured out what purpose airing them would solve, other than allowing myself to feel better by getting things off my chest. Okay, Jack, so that is the conclusion of this story. What do you think?
Well, it looks like he's kind of rationalized the reason that he needs to continue to watch the recording feed.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It seems like he's definitely trying to rationalize it. It's kind of the situation, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. He's like, well, if I do continue watching, it will only be to see if anything fishy is going on with Emily and Jacob.
It's for completely altruistic purposes to help my family and to protect him and to fix any kind of problems that he has in his marriage.
Oh, exactly. So let's break down some of these characters. So what do you think of Kyle overall?
Well, apart from him having money, I think he's pretty relatable as a character. He's somebody that's kind of lonely and isolated and doesn't have many relationships. And even the one relationship that he does have with his brother is not really, they can't communicate well because of, like he said, the distance in age that they have.
I agree with that. He just seems like a bit of a lonely person, but definitely relatable. It just seems like he doesn't have many interactions with people, and he's found this one thing that gives him pleasure, because I think he said he's not doing anything day to day with his company. He's just kind of outsourced most of that to people within the company.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, reality television is one of the most watched genres of any kind of television. So it would really be tempting, like no matter who was in the house, to be able to have kind of a God's eye view into someone's day-to-day life without any kind of sense that they knew that, the camera was going.
I think we should also bring up the fact that he has told them multiple times, and he told Emily while he was there, he was working on the security system, and nobody seems to be interested in actually working the system.
Yeah, it seems kind of odd that they ignored that, but I guess they just really didn't think that much of it, which I guess if you do have a security system and you're used to just having it there, you don't really expect people to go and watch the feed. And he did actually admit that they weren't aware that he has remote access. But it seemed like he wanted to tell them, like, please let me get rid of this obsession that I have so that I can continue on with my life and just go back to normal.
Yeah, or he could just have his brother change the password and then it could be over with. But once again, I think we're back to the 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So what do you think about Emily?
Well, we don't. I also thought that she was a little bit rude to Kyle in that he comes in, he allows them to like rent his nice place in the Bay Area, and he's trying to say like, oh, hey, here, do you want me to show you this one thing? And she's, telling him to like, oh, buzz off. Like this is my house now.
I do find that interesting about her. And just to kind of go into her and the brother's relationship, not Kyle, but her husband.
Lucas.
Yeah, Lucas. I do think it's interesting in how he defines it and talking about early on when they kind of split up, then they're getting back together and Lucas meets her on Hinge and he immediately starts getting back into shape just so that things can develop further. So I think that he knows she's a bit of a superficial person, both characters, Kyle and Lucas. But Lucas wanted the relationship so badly that he went through all of that effort. And now he's at his work and he's trying to take on more responsibility. So he's kind of lost that, his good looks are kind of waning a little bit.
Yeah, it seems like she's addicted to men who would be in the beach section of a Dillard's catalog, like an attractive guy, but not so attractive that it's, that he would be a male model. He would just be like more of a generic Sears or Dillard's type model, and she's kind of addicted just to rip guys.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely the case. And I mean, Lucas, obviously, I kind of touched on him, but it seems like we don't really know like if he's that nice of a guy or not. I mean, the brother seems to describe him like there is a bit of an age gap. But he doesn't really go into his character, but he seems like he was kind of an outgoing guy before he started taking on more responsibilities at work.
Yeah, and from the last little part there, I think that the author, Kyle, definitely has more to say, and he hasn't figured out whether or not he's going to reveal that information. But my best guess would be both the Jacob thing accelerates and maybe even his obsession with her. That'd be interesting to see if he updates the story.
Oh, yeah, I hope he does drop an update for this, because you were saying you were hoping to see his obsession with Emily if it keeps growing even further.
Yeah, because he's clearly deteriorating and he's conflicted at this point. But if he gives in to his obsession and really steers into it, this could be a huge problem. And I could see a conflict breaking out between him and Jacob. Now, it would be interesting if there was a twist and actually the Emily was just interested in Kyle.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. Like the image pulled up on her computer was Kyle.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But I do not get the hint that Kyle would be of the Dillard's Beach Bod variety.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think so at all.
And it doesn't seem like he has a very good rapport with Emily, especially since when he was up in his office, she was trying to, veer away from the conversation that she was having with Jacob downstairs because she was worried that he was like overhearing a little bit too much. So I don't get the sense that they're very close.
Yeah, same. I agree.
Well, Harrison, I think that's going to do it for this story, unless there's an update in which we will cover.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it as always.